What's up, everybody? Got another guest this week on the Dragzine Podcast, one of the baddest dudes to bracket race in the world, Jeff Verdi. What's going on, Jeff?
Hey, man. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Thanks for joining us. You've been a busy man early this year so far, right?
Yeah, did a lot of work on the car over the winter, but didn't get a chance to test anything, and we decided to drive all the way out to Vegas, and first couple of days was a little sketchy getting it figured out, but once we got it figured out, it worked out pretty good on the last day. So, can't complain.
But I love that. I love that you say we did a bunch of updates, didn't test, drove to Vegas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pretty confident in what we put on the car, but I never had anything like other than stock stuff on the front end. So we put coilovers on it and control arms on it. And really, it was all about the front end travel that was holding us up. And once we got that figured out, it was good to go. So, but around here was between weather and work. I mean, just couldn't get out there and test. So we were like, well, let's just, we'll figure it out. So.
Gotta love the mindset of drag racers, because I've been a part of adventures like that before. You make wholesale changes, don't test. You're like, you know what? Let's just go and let's race and let's see how it goes.
Yeah, well, off season's been rough, of course, on a lot of people, and pretty rough in our neck of the woods with different things going on with the COVID stuff and work and just wanted to get away. It's like, they moved it up earlier in the year and by 3 or 4 weeks, and it was like, man, we were not going to be able to test anything that we did, so. We didn't really have a choice if we wanted to go. And I had planned on going since, well, we didn't get to go last year because of COVID. So, Vegas, it's on, and that's where the race is. So we went on.
It's always fun that, you look at drag racing, it really is the ultimate way to escape reality as a hobby, because when you go to the track, for me personally, everything else melts away. I don't, nothing else really goes to my mind except what you're there, and you're there to have fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Vegas, I mean, hey, you can do all kinds of stuff. We didn't really go around anywhere. I always tell myself I'm gonna go check out a bunch of stuff, but we never do. We sit around the track, but 5 hours or 4 hours in between runs, you're just chilling out, talking about car stuff, or, seeing people you haven't seen in a year or two. And so it's a good time. Definitely race for a few seconds or minutes at a time. So the rest of the time you're just hanging out and talking and telling stories and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
It's always fun for me on the media side of things, because people are like, man, you get to travel all over. And I'm like, you got to understand, one, most of these events, these tracks, they say they're in a big city, but that's just to kind of like let people know the general area. They're usually not in that area. And you're usually at the track for hours on end, and by the time you're done racing, you're so tired you don't want to do anything else.
Yeah No, it's pretty much the same thing every night. You get back to the hotel, and the good thing is our hotel had restaurants in it and a casino in it, so you really don't have to go anywhere. You just and the track, I mean, the hotel I stay at is in between the track and downtown in Vegas, so it's a perfect place to you don't have to drive it maybe 10 minutes and you're back at the hotel and go to dinner. It's a good time out there, no doubt.
Let's talk about the spring fling for a minute before we start jumping into these questions. You went in there with, 2 cars on an open trailer, driving across the country, untested. What's it like, typically going into one of these big events like this year's spring fling?
I mean, I think about these races like while I'm cutting grass, while I'm working at the shop. I'm playing the race out in my mind with, from 5 cars left on, who's left in, who's doing this, what we're talking about. And so you kind of enjoy that. I enjoy that part of it, just getting hyped up for it and thinking about it all. And then, of course, my buddy Rocky, he actually did all the work on my car over the winter just for me to take his car to Vegas. He's like, look, I know you want to put the control arms on it, put new rear end stuff in it, fix a bunch of other stuff, and I really didn't have time to do it. And he said, I know you don't have time to do it. He said, I'll do all that for you if you just take my car to Vegas. So we took his Duster, to Vegas, and he didn't have the week he wanted to have, but he did enjoy the experience, and it was cool. And talking about it all the way out there, he'd never been on a trip like that that was my 5th time going, so it was. I'm kind of used to the ride, and it doesn't really bother me, and it didn't seem to bother him too much. We were talking racing stuff, and it's kind of cool to just time goes by pretty fast when you're just shooting the bull, riding down a highway for hours and hours. But, money wise, I was very fortunate to lay down a 3,000 package at Bristol last year that gave me a free entry to the million in Vegas. So I didn't have to pay the $2,000 to run the million, this year. So my tab wasn't very high and I didn't have to buy back any day, which was good. So money wise, it was pretty decent. And then I ended up doing good on that Saturday night, getting runner up. So made the trip worth it, but yeah, it's money wise, the fling events, when you pretty much, I've said it before, if you plan on going to one, this is pretty cool that they did away with the pre-entry and the cap on the car count this year. So, now's the time to experience it if you want to, anybody that hadn't been able to do it, because it's like, if you're a decent racer, you lay down a good light, you'll get a weather station sometimes, or if you on a time run, they'll say the next 20 sets, the best light gets a transmission case, and it's like, wow, you might win a transmission case and that'll make up for the whole week and the money you spend, whatever. So it's pretty neat, the prizes they give away. And I always look at that as being a good racer or doing well, you'll probably come away with something, whether it's a best losing package award, like a driving suit or a converter or slicks or something. And so they make it really, really fun, to when you do race. If you race good and just get beat, you might win something anyway. So,
So it's like a race with a game show wrapped into it.
Oh yeah, it's constant, and what makes you mad is when they, I'll put like a 001 light up and don't get anything, and then the very next couple cars they go, okay, the next 001 gets this, and I'm like, well, man, I just had one, 5 minutes ago, but I didn't get anything, But you just got to wait and catch it at the right time, because I've won a weather station before by having a perfect light. Actually, the first year I went to Vegas, you go out there on your one time and you hit a perfect light, just wow. And then they tell you, oh man, you want a weather station. It's like, well, that's pretty cool. And so, yeah, it's always prizes just nonstop. They'll pull open the prize vault, they call it, and just start giving away stuff, especially towards the end of the week when they still got stuff left over. They'll, like if they have a rain, if something gets rained out one day, they'll double it all up the next day. So they're just giving prizes away like crazy. So it's really cool how they do it.
Well, Jeff, bracket racing is the backbone of sportsman drag racing. I've said this before, that it makes the wheels on the bus go round and round. Some guys love it. Some guys despise it. What makes you want to do it versus any other type of drag racing?
Well, I guess it's, that's the only racing I've really done. When I was 1989, I started racing, trophy class, and it was the only thing we really had was, you dial them in, go, and I'd love to race super stock one day. I always talk about that because that's kind of like a bracket class, but it's, pretty cool cars, and the way that either stock or super stock to me is what I'd like to run, other than if I didn't do just bracket racing. But it, when you get into this stuff, it's all about how, you don't have a whole lot of money to build a car, or you got help and it takes you a couple of years to build one. And, it's really the only racing we had to do. Now index racing's come a long way, and now the grudge racing stuff, but the grudge racing stuff is just, that's some fast stuff out there. And a lot of, nitrous, all kinds of stuff like that I'm just not into. So it never really interested me to try to go, because I'm never going to be fast as any of them guys. I mean, not just because I run a Pontiac, but that's I'm not putting nitrous on it, and I like where I'm at in 580 range, 570 range. If that's about as fast I want to go anyway with my dual car. So I've gotten carried away before and spent a bunch of money on dragsters and 40-foot gooseneck trailer and all that stuff, and it was cool, but I didn't win any more than I do with my stuff here, and it seemed like it was a lot more work. So I just, I'd rather have the open trailer and riding out to Vegas. I mean, stop every couple hundred miles, and every time you go to a gas station, somebody's looking at the cars. I mean, kids don't even know what these cars are. They look at them like, man, what is that? Or looking inside, looking at underneath the bottom of them, the back of where the rear is and stuff, seeing the big tires, and you see all the white boxes going down the road. Nobody knows what's in them. There are dragsters in them, or there's who knows what, but nobody can see them, but I like the open trailer because people could see all the cool looking cars. I mean, you don't hardly ever see anybody driving their classics anymore, or any cool cars, old stuff. So, I like, that stuff because it's, it's history really, but it's, 50-year-old stuff that still looks cool. And, the young guys see it now that are 20 years old or under and just can't believe, they just don't even know what it is, but it's pretty neat. So, yeah, bracket racing to me is something I hope I don't have to ever give up, anytime soon, but that's all I've done. And I really don't, think about really racing anything else other than that.
It's interesting. A lot of guys don't have that desire to go a lot faster because with speed and horsepower comes problems. That's the best way to describe it. If you like working on stuff, heads up racing's for you.
Right. Yeah. Jerry Lone, my engine man, he tells me all the time, because I talk about stepping my stuff up a little bit, putting a little more compression in it or whatever. And he's just like, well, do you want to run every Saturday, or do you just want to run this Saturday? Because if you want to run every Saturday, then just keep it where it is, 13.5 to 1 compression, I got 1,000 runs on the motor I just took out of my car, and the one I just put in there, it's got like 150 runs on it now, so that's good to go for a while. And freshen it up, keep it the same. We run a little bit of aggressive stuff for what traditional Pontiac stuff is, or whatever. It does probably 50, 900 horsepower, but it lasts. We build it to last, and we don't want to work on it. We don't like taking the hood off at the track. Just leave it on. When you leave home, it should be right. And hopefully you don't have to do nothing when you get there. It tends to be that way. Most of the time. So yeah, we don't want to bump it up too much. Then you end up, like I said, with problems. Head gaskets or whatever. So yeah, I don't want to be fooling with that stuff, especially with the entry fees like they are nowadays.
Yeah, no doubt. Got to save your money and put it where it needs to be, right?
Yeah, you're gonna pay that kind of money to go racing. You really don't want any kind of issue with head gaskets or anything with your car, really. So we call it buying insurance. When you put the heavier duty stuff in, even though it costs a little more, you're like, okay, well, this input shaft is 200. Well, this one's 400. I'm gonna get the $400 one because I've broken one, 20 years ago. And it's like, well, I don't want that to happen in 5th round of the million or whatever. So we call it buying the insurance. You just put the good stuff in it. And a lot of people run, 176 planetary gear sets forever, and they'll hold up for a while, but I've broken those too. So it's like, nah, you get the 180 gear set to get the good one, and just buy it once, and it's probably going to be fine for 2,500, 300, 3,000 runs, So, but yeah, it's when you go racing the way we are now, all these big money races, it just costs so much to go, and too much on the line to have stuff that, could break or might break.
So kind of what you just said there will play into this next question. You've won countless rounds of racing, stacked up track championships, doubled up on $1 million races in the same year. What did it take for you to become such a successful bracket racer? Because that's a skill. That is not luck. That's a skill to be able to do it at that level.
Yeah, it takes practice, and that's practicing by going to the track when you have, your local races and your points races. You go down there and just race as much as you can, and then I got a full size practice tree, and I'd get in my car and suit up and practice tree in the garage, just hit that 50 times a night or whatever, and put the tree out in the driveway and put the spotlights on it and hit the tree, like it's at the track. You just kind of get that comfort from, so you're not nervous when you're actually doing it for real. You've seen it from inside your car practicing, and I used to tell myself, I'm like, just like in the garage, man, just like in the garage. And you just go up there and just hit it, and I'm not the best on the tree. I set up kind of 10 or 11 on the tree most of the time, because my car, I try to run dead on, and I don't want to give myself too close to the wind of the red light. I hate red lighting. So it's like, some people, you can't race with the fear of red lighting, but I don't know. I just kind of set up, some guys set up real tight, and it bites them a lot, but they do win a lot of rounds. And if being a good bracket racer, you're going to lose more than you win. So you got to learn how to lose. And, when we used to race 38, 40 races a year and win 2 to 5, I said, well, you got to lose 36 times, 35 times, man. So get used to, I don't care if you don't go to the lane and lose, or you red light and lose, you break out and lose. Doesn't matter how you lost. It's like, that's just, better odds maybe that you're going to win one coming up. You just get rid of that loss and just shake it off, and because we all do stupid stuff in the car sometimes. And that's what I hate the most, when you let go of the button before the tree lights up, or you roll 5 out and go full red or something. You're like, you knew it was going to happen when you did it, but you're trying to be a little bit aggressive or be, at the time you don't think you're being aggressive, but then it comes up red and then you never want to do that again, but yet you kind of need to sometimes. But go through the years of racing, and points racing is a different deal. And we race points around here for so long that you get stuck in the going rounds mode of just gathering points every week. You really didn't care if you won every week. You just wanted to go 3 or 4 rounds every week. And that was kind of the way you won championships. You just kind of didn't lose first round. If you can win first round every week, you're guaranteed top 5 in points pretty much. So, you look at the season as a whole and you say, well, I want to finish with this number. And to get there, if I just win first round every week, I'm there with just by looking at that over a 20 race season. But those are kind of few and far between now, especially with the COVID thing, and a lot of tracks, our local tracks shut down. Richmond, which was a shame. That's my favorite place to race, really, but that's no longer available to us. So we used to race 20 races a year, and you really got a lot of practice in, but now it's like, oh, we're going to this 5-day race cross country, and we haven't even raced since October. So you better be ready on the tree when you get there, because it's kind of like riding a bike, but yet it's not. It's you think you're good at it, but I practiced all winter. We had a practice tree league that I belonged to, and we practice every night or every day or a few days a week, and that keeps you hitting the tree, because if not, you're just not gonna do it. You get kind of like, oh, I don't need to practice, I'm worried about it. And then when you get to the track in March and you're just not there, mentally, or you think you are, but your numbers are all over the place and you're trying to figure out why. Well, that could be why, because you're just not getting enough seat time anymore. We used to get a lot of seat time, and you could roll into a track, and hit the tree pretty good. But now it's like, it's few and far between. So, and then when you go to tracks all over the country, you see different, like out in Vegas, they got the national event tree, which nobody else runs, with the blue lights, the half lights. When you stage on that for the first time, you've never seen it before. It's kind of interesting, because it's just not the same as the incontestants looking at it, So, but if you practiced a lot over the winter, you're kind of confident in yourself to hit the tree, and you trust that you go into automatic mode and you're fine. You don't worry about any of the little stuff that gets into your head. So a lot of practice is really good, but seat time in the cars, nothing like that really. But
well, before we get to our next question, I got to hit up our first sponsor of this broadcast, Performance Distributors. The company allows you to feel the difference, not just ignite a spark. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, their ignition systems are designed and manufactured under the most stringent of guidelines. In fact, the owner, Steve Davis, told us their systems are designed as if they're running their vehicles, because they are. One of their products you might already know from them is their line of Dui Distributors, the first and one of the best HEI distributors on the market. Their machine-calibrated timing curves provide instant throttle response and eliminate engine-damaging detonation. For those of you with late-model vehicles, their Sultans of Spark ignition coils are based on the DUI technology, so they too can accommodate wider splug gaps for more filing voltage. Make sure you check out performancedistributors.com for all of your ignition needs. Got to hit those sponsors, right? Because they keep the trains rolling.
That's right. I like it.
And, kind of piggybacking off, sponsors and whatnot, it's interesting to see what it takes to go to these big events, because, you almost have to be like a high stakes gambler to have a little bit of a bankroll to go to these at times. Is that like the biggest difference between that and local racing, or, what's kind of the difference between local racing and big show racing?
Yeah, I mean, when you go to these big money races, I mean, it can be really expensive, and especially when they, like last year, they had them all on top of each other because of the way the season was going. And I mean, it was crazy money to go to those things, and spending 100 to 200, on your local Saturday night race versus 2,000 to 3,000 going out of town. You've got to mentally, you just got to squash it like it's not. You didn't spend the money. You can't worry about it. If you go there like that, very difficult to race, and have a clear head about things when you're worried about it. Because I've done it myself. I bailed out of the Million in Alabama one year because I just didn't feel good about the money I was spending, and I'd spent a lot of money because I went racing the week before, and the race got postponed a day and it rained. And I was like, you know what, man, I'm just going to bail. I said, just because if I lose first round, that's 2 plus 5 is 2,500. And I could just hit the road and be home this evening and have my 2,500 in my pocket. And it's when if you hit one of those or 2 of those a year, then you really don't have no problem, with thinking about money wise. But when you hit 3 or 4 of them in a couple months, you're just like, man, this is, not win anything. That's when it really gets on you. You start wearing you down a little bit, because I really didn't start doing this stuff till 2015, as far as going to the million and going to the big money races. And, I was fortunate to win right off the bat, but then, years go by and the money gets put different places. And now you're still looking at, hey, I got to take $3,000 to go down here and race this race, or go to Vegas. You better have $4,000 or $5,000 to go that one, just because it's all the way across the country, and it's a lot involved there. But, you just got to believe in yourself. And, I look at the million as being something totally different than, let's say, a 50 grander, because, the million is, you turn on 5 win lights, you're usually in the split unless somebody don't want to split. And so I look at myself, I feel I can go 4 or 5 rounds any given day in my head. So I say, well, hey, I can make the split. That's 15 grand, 10 grand, depending on what goes down. And, what day can you go racing and turn on 5 win lights and get that kind of money without even winning the race, so it's like, I'm gonna take my shot, at those, so it, yeah, it's definitely a mindset. You got to be prepared for it, save for it. Now they've had a whole lot more, in recent years than they ever had. So it's a little more difficult. You kind of got to pick which ones you want to go to. And, I own my own business, me and my wife with the cabinet shop. And so I can't really, I'd like to go to more, but I can't be gone but so much. And so I always like to run the spring fling events because they're really ran well and they have a lot of prizes and it's a good time. And so I kind of pick those out first to go to. And then, the other ones, if I can make it, I'll go. But typically it's hard to, hit them all because you're going to spend a lot of money. And if you don't get down to the late round, one of them, then it could be really rough on you. So, but yeah, it's definitely different than a Saturday night, local race, as far as, but the racing itself is not any different. So, people that can win at a local level can win at these races. I even say it's easier sometimes because you're racing as people you don't know. They don't know you. You're just out there putting down laps, and you're doing good. And your confidence is usually up when you go to a different place, or somewhere new, So when you race the same people every Saturday night, they tend to beat up on you a little bit, or you kind of get used to how people race and stuff. So it's a little bit better when you go out of town. It seems like the ones that go out of town for the first time and never been before seem to do good. I don't know if it's beginner's luck or they're pumped up about going, they're confident, or whatever, and they're just having a good time. And next thing you know, they're down at the end of the race, and you're like, man, you ought to do this more often. But you end up falling back into the same old stuff if you go all the time. But, I think it's good for somebody to try at least once a year, pick ones you want to go to and have fun with, like a vacation, and don't even worry about the money you're spending, just because that way you'll probably come out with some, a good prize of some sort. So
I was on the Going Bracket Racing podcast last week with those guys, and we were talking about the race in Vegas, and admittedly, I'm not like into the hardcore, minute details of the the big money bracket racing scene. I know a couple of big names, like you and a few other guys, and we were joking. I'm gonna hopefully have one of my cars ready to go race this year, and I was like, I'm gonna go to one of these events. Never been. Maybe it'll be good because I literally won't know if there's a giant great white shark lining up next to me. I'm like, oh, look, that's a really nice Camaro. Having no idea it's some guy that's probably about to rip my soul out. So for someone that's about to embark on their first big money bracket race this year, what challenges am I going to be looking at? What do I need to prepare myself for before I just fork over a pile of money and, get taken to the cleaners like a bad gambler?
Well, the thing that a lot of people don't think about, and I even forget about it sometimes, is the time between rounds. It's like 4 or 5 hours between every run you make, until later in the race. So that's where you kind of got to, stay awake, walk around a little bit, don't fall asleep, because it seems like that's one of the worst things you can do in between rounds, because it just seems to put you into a different frame of mind or whatever. But there's a lot of time between rounds, but a lot of talking to friends and comparing notes or whatever, and figuring out if the tree is, delay numbers like back home or whatever, or, different things. But I mean, if you want to do it, I'm saying if anybody wants to do it, they got to try it. I mean, it's something that's, you never know when it's your day. You gotta go all in when you do it though. Don't bail out and not buy back. If you lose first round and get discouraged, if you're confident in yourself in your car, if your car is running the number, or if it's capable of doing that, and you're just missing the tree a little bit, or you're, whatever reason, just, you can't give up and like, no, I'm not going to buy back, after you lose first round. Or like even this past week, in Vegas on the Saturday, I was thinking, because I lost first round, and I was like, well, I could load this thing up and be in New Mexico and get my trip started, 500 miles down tonight if I go ahead and just load up and leave, on Saturday night. But then I said, no, I told myself I'm gonna run Saturday night because it's a way to maybe make up for the week of not winning anything. And you never know when you could do it. Well, 10 rounds later, I'm in the final and got a nice split, and made up for the whole deal, and it's like, if I had bailed out and put my car on the trailer, I would have never had the opportunity to get that. So when you go to those races, just say, look, it's this much money and this is what I'm taking. I'm willing to lose it if I lose it. And, you're just going to go in there, and the people you think are sharks. I mean, hey, I'm 32 in the final last week. The round before, a really, really talented racer was 45 on me. So, you never know. I mean, he came off a 001 light and went 45. Well, I came off a really good string of lights and then had a 32 in the final. Any light I had the previous 10 rounds that day would have won the race, because the other guy was 18 in the final. All I need to do is be 17 or better. And I'm 32. So I'm out. But I'm, if you look at that, like, you never know when it's your day. You gotta buy back. You gotta go all in on it, and just make sure your stuff is prepared. You don't want to go down with a car that's leaking oil and, old slicks and, worn out stuff, because you got to give yourself the opportunity. You can't just go out there and have problems, and it could be your shot to win it, but you had something wrong that you could easily fix back home or whatever, so the best thing to do is just have your stuff ready and financially, make sure you can go, but don't cut yourself short. It's like every day, because first round is usually the toughest round. It's like the most nerve wracking or whatever it is. And you've got 5 hours in between your time run. Most time you don't even get a time run at these big races. So, it's been the day before when you made your last run. So the odds are, well, somebody's losing first round out of the pair. So if it's you got to just buy back. I like to go up there and immediately just buy back in. I'm like, it's done. You hate to spend the money, but you got to do it, get back in it. And I've won more from the buyback round than I have from not buying back. So it's, like I said, you got to give yourself a shot,
It's interesting what you said about the first round. I know when I've gone out bracket racing that usually I find, just for me personally, if I can get past the first round, I'm going to win at least two more. It's a confidence thing. You get up and you mix in a little bit of luck, and it really helps. You sneak one out, you catch someone sleeping on the tree in the next round. You're walking into the third round and you're feeling good. You got a big Superman S on your chest. And I think that's what makes bracket racing interesting, is that it's a lot more of a mental game. It's like golf. It's not the physical aspect, it's the mental side of the racing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I always compared to golf. A lot of things about it that are similar, but yeah, no, definitely, confidence. I mean, when you go out there and you string together a couple good lights and cars run around the money, it's nothing like that. That's what you want to happen. And for some reason, a lot of the time it doesn't happen. You're not hitting the tree that day, or the car is doing something weird, and you're like, man, what is going on? But then when it starts clicking, and you're like, man, you can dial it right on the money, and you're hitting the tree like you want to. That's the main thing I always say. I just want to, basically put on a good show. Like I want to do good. I don't care if I win or not. I just don't want to do nothing stupid, because I've done that plenty of times. Like I say, many, many times come off the tree before it even lit up. We're leaving off the top bulb, with the delay box, and the tree's a little long coming on, and you just, you meet it coming on, or you come off before the thing even lights up, and you just like totally threw away a race that you maybe could have won, and you just beat yourself up for that. And the next round, you're trying to hold on to the button so you don't do that again. Well, then that makes you late. And so those days are just awful to try to get your mind off of it and get back to racing like you know how to do. And that's what I did last Saturday, was just came right out the gate, hitting the tree good, and didn't have any issues with letting go, and everything was cool. And when it's like that, yeah, when you get to third or fourth round, it feels great when you're on, because you definitely feel like someone's about to beat you. You're probably not going to lose it yourself. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot better race day when that's going on.
You got to have a really short memory, bracket racing. Dan Fletcher talked about that. We had him on the show. He's like, you know what? It got to the point where he goes, whatever happens, happens. I'm going to go out there, do my deal, push the tree, our red light. You know what? I'd rather die on my shield than, die on my knees kind of deal.
Right. Oh yeah. That's definitely what you got to do, really. I mean, if you got to go after the tree. You can't be scared of it or worried about it. Whatever it is. And like you said, if you can forget about that last run, because when you sleep on it and it comes back the next day and you're still thinking about it, it's awful. So you got to just let it go. Whatever happens, let it roll off your back. Just, it's done. And whether it's some guy in front of you sprayed something on the track and you spin, after your car's been deadly all day, and you get in something or you're out of the groove, it's nighttime for the first time, and you not lined up right or whatever. And, but kind of like, forget it, that's over with. Like I said, it's one of your losses, it's like, hey, it's one of my losses. So just whatever happens, happens. So just keep on getting it, So yeah, it's definitely a short-term memory is a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, it's something I've noticed when, we did a lot of heads up racing. It's different there because we didn't have buybacks. You didn't turn on the wind light, you're packing up and going home. And you look at what happened and you take it a shot. You're like, well, we learned something here. Let's try to not do that again, or let's try to do something better and head on down the road.
Okay. No, we don't have much of that. It's buybacks are usually, sometimes when they don't have buybacks, I'm kind of like, well, good. That way the race will be over with quicker. If you do good, then, it takes a round out of the race typically. So it's good to have that sometimes, but when you don't get a time run, everybody wants that buyback because, the first round's kind of like a time run for everybody. So.
Well, in buybacks, sometimes when they don't have them, on the heads up racing side of things, we don't complain because we've been to an event before when they announced that there were going to be buybacks when we were already hours behind schedule, and they opened up the buyback line. We're like, we looked at each other, we looked at our watches, we're like, seriously, is anybody else paying attention to what's going on here? And I get it. You got to keep the cash flow coming, but sometimes it's like, man, we don't want to be here till 4 a.m.
Yeah, I've definitely happened a couple of times. We're like, really, but I understand it from their end, but it definitely makes for a long night or a long race if they, if it's already 8 o'clock or something and they got buybacks with 400 cars there. You're like, you got to be kidding me, right? But yeah, I get it.
And the thing is it's smart. Buybacks are the greatest invention ever on a track person's deal, because it's like you are selling the drugs that the addicts need, and they're just like, shut up and take my money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when you have first and second round buybacks, and they allow you to double enter. Well, then you really get to spending a lot of money, because I've done that before, and it's like, wow, you win with one, but you lose with the other one, but you get back in, so you're in, and then you get to, I think I got to the 7th round and won like $200, and I'd spent, I don't know how much to get to that point, buying back and stuff. So yeah, it's a little rough.
I was in the tower talking to a track person doing an interview, and the buyback line was forming, and it dawned on me really quick. I could put together an awesome story without writing a word. All it would be is just a camera mounted, and it'd be like a confessional hearing buyback excuses.
Right. That would be good. That would be good.
I mean, just like the reactions, and like, just like, I remember this one guy walked in, literally just threw his money down and said, grumbled something and walked off. I'm like, oh, someone had a bad day there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You definitely hate when you lose first round, but the way I look at first round is when you buy back, there's one less round you have to go now. You've already towed there, so you don't have to tow there to get there for this new race you're now entering into again, and you've had a time run now. So the buyback is like you just start a whole new race over again, and now you've had a time shot. It's less rounds to complete it now, and you're already there. So you might do it and pretend like it's a whole new race all over again. But yeah, the 50 grander at Galat in 2018, I was, it was 260 to buy back, and I'm just walking around just all ticked off because I womped the gas one time and gave it back like a couple thousands at the finish line. And if I just held foot in it, I win, and I'm just like, man, I ain't buying back, I ain't buying back. And I'm walking around, this guy I know, he comes up, he's like, hey, you never know, Verdi, it might be your day, and sure enough, I'm in the final, rounds later and get nice check at the end of the night, and I'm just like, wow, I wasn't even going to buy back, but yeah, I get it. That 260 that you spend could turn into thousands. So you got to do it. I hate doing it, but you got to do it. But yeah.
What makes racing fun sometimes are things like superchargers, and a company that makes some of these superchargers is selling ProCharger. For 25 years, ProCharger has been an industry-leading aftermarket supercharger manufacturer by designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market. No matter if you're looking for 3,500 horsepower for a record-setting Pro Mod or a DIY system for your street car, truck, or motorcycle, ProCharger has the perfect supercharger system for you. For more information on amazing ways you can bolt on 50, 60, 70, or even 100% more power or more, visit ProCharger.com. Hitting those sponsor spots, and that one will segue nicely because it's interesting to see in top dragster and top sportsman. You're not seeing as much as like in bracket racing per se, but in those classes, you're seeing a lot more power adders at those higher levels. Is there a reason why you don't think you see a lot more of that in just your regular bracket racing, or why guys just use nitrous?
I think it's mainly because of the starting line, with a blower. Like a lot of guys run the little small blowers now, and it's picking the cars up where they don't have to redo the motor completely. They just can put this, small supercharger on there, and it picks them up half a second, but it's still really aggressive off the starting line versus nitrous. Will say you're going to spray after you get going a little bit, or it's just a little different. Like, especially the ones that mount down the crank, those kind of usually in top dragster and some of the top sportsmen. I mean, those are really aggressive, as far as off the line. So you don't, our bracket cars, you'll see us some 440 dragsters, 430 dragsters, but when you get down there, I mean, that's running in the sixes in the quarter mile. So, that's kind of pushing it for a regular bracket racing track. Now, most of the time, these big races, they treat the track really well, and they'll hook up, in the early going. But what about 300 feet out when that thing getting the tires stood up and it switches to high gear and that thing's putting down a couple thousand horsepower, man? It's like, well, they better be good out there. And when you're running late into the night, some of these races go into midnight or later, and the dew's falling and the different things are happening. You can't take a chance on having something with that kind of power, where the nitrous you can use at the finish line, just catch up or fool your opponent or whatever, but it's not a constant power like those blowers do. You're just asking a lot. I've seen a lot of guys go to these things recently in the last few years, and they're pulling 20 degrees of timing out off the starting line. They're trying to do things to get it down the track because it's just a little too aggressive. It makes so much power, and most of them are on alcohol anyway, and that seems to make a lot of torque and makes a lot of power. So you really got to be, kind of careful when because most of the time these tracks, well, when you go to somewhere like Galat or even, most of them now have the equipment to keep it, nice on the surface. But like out in Vegas, I mean, got an awesome track crew, but the wind was blowing 50 miles an hour, and you had just, stuff to deal with. And if you have a car that makes tons of power and you're out there in the middle of the track where the wind has blown dust or whatever all around, you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. So I don't think you see a whole lot of that, except for, particular classes like, say, top sportsman, top dragster, because those fields are, not 500 cars in them and running all throughout the night and everything. So, but yeah, I think nitrous is a good thing to have. I don't have it on my Firebird, but I used to have it on there. But yeah, a lot of guys like to run that stuff. But blower wise. You don't see a whole lot of that in brackets.
That's an interesting take on it with, the track conditions and the longer running deals. Because Top Sports and a Top Dragster, I love watching that. That is like ridiculously fast. The level of accuracy they have playing the stripe at 200 miles an hour is mind blowing. But yeah, I could see where, on your typical Saturday night show, dragging out a 6-second door car might not be the best tactical decision.
Yeah. I think it'd be, plus the groove can be hard to see at night, different things with, like I said, dew falling and fog or whatever, it can be tough to try to, a car that's got to be on the perfect, starting line situation to work. You may not get that just for whatever reason, when you're running a race all the way into the night and all that stuff. So, that's not my cup of tea anyway. I want to make sure I got something that'll go down every time and I don't have to worry about it if I get out of the groove a little bit, if it's going to be, wadded up or get, who knows what could happen if it gets out of the groove a little bit. My car, hopefully will always be fine, but I don't have too much of a trouble with it ever because it's not that fast. But, a guy with a blower, when the power's coming in and then the car changes second gear, if that transmission hits really hard, well, it could break the tires loose because all that power, out there in the middle of the track. And, it'd be really difficult to try to win bracket races that we run with a setup like that on a consistent basis. The dragsters can do it a little easier than the door cars, I guess, because it's, a little different setup, the way a dragster works versus a door car with the motor up front and all that. So, but yeah, you definitely want something that's, a little more underpowered than overpowered in bracket racing.
Going off of that, where do you think bracket racing's going overall? Do you think there's too many big money races? Do you think the local tracks need to make a comeback? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, well, with the last couple of years anyway, it's been rough on the local scene. Everything's been shut down and all, and it's kind of given way to the bigger money races to be where you want to go, or the only place you can race really. But before that went down, I mean, it was, local racing, definitely want to see more of it, but it depends on everybody. So, built these cars that it cost so much money and they're like, oh, I'm not taking my car out for under $5,000 to win, or something like that. And it's like, well, no, man, a regular local race like that of Virginia Motorsports Park, you're paying $2,500 to win on a regular points race, which is great. I mean, that used to be $1,200, $1,000, about how much you're going to get. And now they bumped that up. And if you get over 80 cars, it's going to bump it up even more. So you can find a local track that you like to race at, and, definitely should go there. The big money stuff, there's a lot of promoters out there that, there's only but so many weekends in a year, and they trying to work around each other and this side of the, country, the other side, or down south or whatever. And then of course the weather comes into play. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I ain't gonna say that there's too many of them, because there's an opportunity for whoever wants to go can go. You don't have to go, but it makes you want to go. Some of these, especially the $1 million races. I mean, that's just like, wow, you feel like you need to go. But it's not everybody's cup of tea. It's like they may not want to get involved with trying to race those kind of events because, if you really face it, is that at the end of the week there's 4 winners and there's 500 cars there. So there's, a whole lot of people that didn't win. So, some people will bail out and not want to go to that kind of stuff, just for financial reasons or, if you go to one 2 weeks prior, you really kind of worn out after the second one you go to for sitting around all day, every day and stuff like that. So it's hard to say. It seemed like they're not slowing down, and it seemed like they got plenty of cars at them, so, I mean, hey, if they can keep it going, that's good. It could be a fad that goes on for a few more years and then kind of fizzles out a little bit when these older people, I ain't gonna say I'm old, but I'm not young anymore. So it gets a little tiring after, a week or two doing it, and being away from home and all that. So it just depends. I mean, I think it's a place for it, but I really think there's a place for local racing. Need to keep that going for sure.
Going off of that, what are some of your favorite events to attend, and why? Is it just any of some of these big races in particular, or What are the ones you got circled on your calendar? Like, all right, I got to hit this.
Definitely the Spring Fling Million, the original Million, which was in Alabama. Now it's going to be at South Georgia this year. Those two, I definitely, my wife even tells me, hey, you're going to those, period, because I won. Yes, that's why she wants me to go to them again. But those two I'm definitely going to. I like the World Foot Brake Challenge that Jared puts on at Bristol. It's always hot, but it's a fun race to go to and go off the bottom bulb. You know, I like to do that a little more often than I'm doing it, really. But I like that one if I can get to it. But it's usually on my son's birthdays on the same weekend a lot of time, you know, the way they have it. So sometimes that's not feasible. But, you know, typically fling races, I really like going to those. And, you know, I'm actually going to a Mutt and Jeff race up in Pennsylvania at Beaver Springs Drag. I've never been there before. That's in June, I think, and I'm looking forward to that. But typically, like I said, the fling races, the $1 million races, try to go to those. Anything else, it's really work related as far as if I can get off work or if I got, you know, my job's done, I need to get done and can make it to them. I'll go to some other ones. But if not, I'll go to Virginia Motorsports Park. It's only an hour from my house, and they got some great races this year. You know, all year this year, they really stepping up their schedule big time, and they got some nice races. So I'm looking forward to some of those.
So switching gears here, I want to talk about the drag racing equivalent of Fight Club, the thing you don't talk about but exists, the split, the mythical split that happens not just in bracket racing but in grudge racing and in other stuff. That's one of the big things in grudge racing. You don't talk about pots. That's just like you don't talk about final monies. What
Right.
is proper split etiquette? You know, when can you expect to be in a split? Like, how's this work? Like, I hear about the split, but I like, there's no guide, there's no user function. Like what do I expect? How do I make it work?
Well, typically, you know, the promoters, now, of course, at certain events, the promoters are racers and they know that, you know, the flyer is what it is. And some people want to race for the flyer, you know, they're not going to split it all, you know, and I've done that once in my life. I said, I'm not going to split anything before I left home because I wasn't planning on racing that day. And if I go down, I'm not going to split. And I ended up getting down to 4 cars. I didn't split. I went home $250, and the other guys, you know, split 5,000 in the final. So I could have got a little more that day, but I chose not to, and that'll never happen again, really, because it didn't work out for me. But in regards to the split, I mean, typically you look at, you know, how many cars are left. Usually when it gets down to about 9 or, you know, somewhere in that range, you know, you can kind of see how it's going, and you know, I'll just use Vegas as an example from last week. You know, I believe 6 round, and if you lost, you got $600. So you look at it like, well, you did good today. You've raced all day. You've raced all week, and it's $600. I'd really like to get 1,000 here. You know, it'd be cool if they bump. You know, it's gonna be 4 losers, so that's only $1,600 that they could take off the 30,000 to win, and make us all get $1,000 right here. That'd be pretty cool. You know, at least you get 1,000, and you know that actually is what happened. So that worked out good, and then you kind of look at the rest of the money and you say, well, you know, if we do 1,000 this round, maybe we can do 2,000 next round. And, you know, on paper, that next round was only going to pay 1,000, but now we're going to make it 2. And you kind of work it all the way through the whole race, because buy runs come into play, and you say, okay, well, there's going to be a buy run every round. And if you don't do it all now, somebody's going to say, well, I'm not doing anything because I got to buy, you know. That's happened before, and that's okay. And there's nothing wrong with racing for what the flyer says. I mean, you came there to do that, and that's fine. It just tends to be when you see these guys at the next race or the next race or the next race, and a lot of guys go rounds at these things all the time, so they're playing the odds that they're going to win one of these things, so they don't want to cut the money up and be their night to win, and they gave away $20,000 or whatever. So some of them don't want to split that much. I don't like to split the whole thing up. Like some people get down to 4 cars and say, well, let's just split it 4 ways and race for the check or the trophy or whatever. You know, they don't want to, you know, I don't like doing that. I think the winner should get, you know, more and winner up and on down the line. So, you know, at a $30,000 to win race with 5,000 per second, when it comes down to about 8 or 10 cars left, you got about 40 something $1,000 to work with. And you can kind of talk amongst yourselves, and the promoter will come down with a piece of paper and he'll go over different scenarios, and you can agree or not agree. And if one person doesn't agree, then say, okay, well, that's when I'd make a deal with you. If I ran you that round, I'd say, okay, well, nobody wants to split, but hey, if one of us gets to the final, we'll kick the other one back $1,000 or $500 or something, and that way we're not bothering the purse. We're just doing it amongst ourselves. And hopefully one of us will go on and get to the end and we'll kick back that money, and that makes it worthwhile. Because if you're spending $1,000 on entry fees and you get down to the late rounds, you want to try to at least get that back, or something, make you feel a little better about your trip, so but the splits are usually everybody's on the same page. Everybody wants to do a little something. And a lot of times you'll get like half the field left, or people that do it all the time. And there's a few of them in there have never been that far before, and they're just super happy to be there. And yeah, I've done this long enough now that I like to see them have a nice night. I like to say, well, hey, that'd be cool for them to have a good experience. It's like when I lost in the final the other night. I mean, I did it to myself. I'm 32 on the tree. Well, I was happy that Kyle Rizzoli won. I said, he got to experience that win with the jacket and the trophy and all that stuff, and he gets to keep that forever. The money will spend, whatever, but you like to see, what I've experienced. You see somebody else experience, you can enjoy it for them. At least that's the way I feel about it, win or lose. Because like I said, I've learned how to lose over the years, and it's like, hey, I can deal with it, and as far as the splits go, people get kind of carried away and say, oh, I'm not splitting nothing, I'm not doing anything. But that gets kind of, usually it gets them out of the race in that round or the next round a lot of the time, because the person that they're running gets a little more amped up, and if they swing for the fence on them and hit it, then they're going to take them out, and then we got more money to split now because he didn't want to split that round. So it's pretty casual most of the time, pretty easy going. Most people are all on the same page, on stuff like that. It depends on how much it is too. The million is like, oh, we got 14 of you left with $465,000. That's a whole different world than having 14 left with 50 grand, so it's a whole different, when you get to that moment, you're like, you're into another world somewhere when you hear those kind of numbers, in a regular bracket race, because that's big money.
First, I want to compliment you on your attitude, because that's an awesome attitude to have, the one to pay it forward on that experience. The next point I want to make is, this is why bracket racers are smarter than heads up racers, because you take that money and you figure out, hey, let's spread this out a little bit more, because we're over here beating our heads in just the race for that big check, the race what's on the flyer. And you guys are like, well, we could take 10 of us and make our money back plus a little extra. Let's do that. That's brilliant. Can't flaw that logic.
That's cool. Yeah, no, it's it just makes sense to me. It's like, the flyer is what gets you there. You look at that, the top prize, and that's what you want to win, but typically, you're not even worried about that once the race gets clicking along and you're down to, 10 cars left. You're looking at that, but you're also just looking at what's left, and you're going to come out with something, and that makes you feel good. It's like, if you win it, that's cool. But like me, we're getting runner up the other day. Runner up was going to pay $5 on the flyer. Well, I got 12, and the winner got 16.5 instead of 30. So, but everybody else down the line got a lot more than, what the flyer said. So to come away with, that kind of money, it's just, win or lose, you're happy about it. You're like, all right, well, we're good, come back to Virginia with some money. So
even at that point, just, you didn't win 30, you only won 16,000. Well, guess what? That paid for that trip. And then that bankrolls you for however many more races you want to do this year.
Right. And if you didn't, and you didn't do anything, and the winner got 30 and I got 5, well, that would have been okay. But that would have basically broke you even for the week, versus, making you really smile on the way home that, hey, I got, a lot more than that. So, it's a good way to make, let's say 10 or 12 people happy versus just one guy being happy. You know what I mean? It's like, we're all there to race. We're all, hopefully going to meet each other again in those late rounds. And that's the way I look at it. Just, doing all right.
Well, Jeff, I have one last question before we wrap things up here. I have a magical checkbook that nobody else knows about, just me and you, and I'm going to open it up to you. And you can race any class you want other than a bracket race. What class would you want to race and what event would you want to win? Doesn't matter what kind of racing it is. You can go buy the best equipment to go race Top Fuel if you want. What class would you want to race and what event would you want to hold the Wally in?
Shoot, man, I don't know. I'd love to do pro stock, but I don't know if I could shift them gears like I see those in-car cameras on those people. I'm used to the air shifter shifting one gear all these years. I think I'd be in a world of hurt with that. But I'm thinking stock, would probably be the best thing for me to race. And of course, Indy, everybody wants to win Indy. And I think that'd probably be, what I would probably do. If I did top sportsman stuff, it'd be kind of like having a pro stock car with a power glide. I'd probably enjoy it. But yeah, no, my favorite class really is pro stock and watching those guys and girls shift gears. I mean, it's like, man, that's just something else, to be moving that quickly, running 650s or whatever in the quarter and they're shifting gears like that and doing all the stuff they do on the starting line. It's just, if I could get that down, that'd be something, to be able to race a class like that.
I'd like to be able to just launch a pro stock car and not wad the car up or tear it up, because that in amongst itself, that's not easy, dropping the clutch and making that thing behave.
Oh yeah. That's just wild. I imagine, like my car on a really good day when it's 60 foots and it kind of gives me a little twinge in my lower back. I'm like, man, that was only like 126, 60 foot, and they're like, sub 1 second or whatever they do. And it's like, man, it's got to feel just incredible when they leave, and then shift gears, over and over again. So that's definitely got to be a ride,
Or you could do it in a radio car and run a sub 9 second 60 foot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those guys
on the back tires.
Yeah, that's amazing. Those guys, I watched Ron Roach run up at Maryland one time, and there was like three of them up there running 440s, 430. I think it was 440s that day. No wheelie bars, small tires, and you just watch them go down the track, and you just can't believe that it's moving that quickly without getting on, standing on the bumper or doing anything weird. I'm like, how do they even do that? I mean, those cars are just amazing to watch. It's just incredible they can run what they run, but those guys running 350s or 360 and small tire, and I mean, that's incredible stuff there. But that would be fun actually, but I don't know, that's a little quick.
Ron Rhodes is a bad man. He went an 8-something 60 foot in a small block nitrous car this weekend, and he didn't have to put a rack in that bitch either the whole weekend.
That is wild, man. That I saw him, like I said, at Maryland. It looks like you could drive it to the store. I'm looking at the thing like, I can't believe that thing runs that fast. It's just amazing. I mean, they definitely got that stuff together on that.
And it's still on leaf springs too.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's too cool. That's one of my favorite cars. Those cars just, his setup is just incredible.
Well, Jeff, our time here is coming to an end, and I like to give my guests their opportunity to impersonate their channel, their inner John Force, and thank all their sponsors and thank who they need people to thank. You don't have to fully impersonate John. That's up to you. Some people have done it. I had to do it last weekend. So it's up to you to thank who you want to thank. Tell people where they can find you at, what you got going on. So the floor is yours, my friend.
I appreciate it. And thank you for the interview. I really appreciate the time. And definitely want to thank Jerry Lone, my engine man. He builds my engine transmissions. Junior Carter, Outlaw Motorsports. He helps me with my car, the chassis and everything. Hoosier Tire. They help me out with tires. Crower Cams helped me out. My buddy Rocky Pendervalley worked on my car all winter. He did a lot of work for me. I appreciate that. Of course, I got to thank my wife letting me go racing and do what I do, and the guys in the shop that get the work done so I can go play around. And other than that, I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but definitely didn't want to forget my wife. That's the most important. So got that taken care of. But yeah, no, definitely I'm a blessed man to be able to go racing and get a little help from some good folks. And, I never seem to have, anything I can't handle because my friends will help me out. So it's all good,
Well, before we sign off here, I've got to thank our sponsors of this broadcast, AFR, Liquid Moly, Pro Charger, Performance Distributors. Stick a pick in this one. It's done. Jeff, thank you so much for joining this week, and hopefully I'll see you at one of the races this year.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.